Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Change of Shift podcast. I am your host, Sean, with my absolute amazing co-host, Emily.
Good
how are you
evening,
tonight?
everybody. Doing great. How are you?
I'm awesome. I'm trying to recover from a wonderful weekend away, hiking and trekking through the woods. How about yourself?
I was trekking, but through Grand Rapids, Michigan last night. Went to the Wood Age Beer Fest at Brewery Vivant, which was fabulous. Hung out with some friends I haven't seen in a while, so it was a good night.
For some reason, like to exercise, even in my off time. I climbed apparently 893 steps on it's called a glen. Never heard of the word glen has a definition. Never knew that. Maybe you knew that. I didn't know that. I had to Google it, but it's apparently what happens when water, effaces a ridge rock. It was absolutely gorgeous. It was, but a lot of the steps were man-made, but some of the stepway was made by water, which was really cool. So
wow, and it was your 10th anniversary trip, wasn't it?
It was my 10th wedding anniversary, so we lived it up. It was a good time. So
awesome.
But enough about us. So tonight's episode, we will briefly mention the reason for the episode, but most importantly, we're going to talk more about the episode itself. So tonight's episode is titled What It Takes to Be a Nurse. And this, of course, was motivated by the debacle that has been talked about for the past week now by the TV show The View. We are going to mention it oh so briefly. We are sick and tired of talking about it, but we're going to mention it because it's important. It was an important moment in the nursing profession, at least in regards to social media and the public's regard for us. So we will mention it one last time.
Well, and I think it's important to mention it, but not dwell on it because it's a tipping point.
Correct.
And I think there are a lot of us in the profession right now who have wanted something to push us forward for a very long time. And I don't know if you've read the book, The Tipping Point, but it fits very well into that.
It does. It does very well. So we will talk a lot about that. So before we get into that, because I know my co-host is just ready to go right into it.
After my 2-hour nap today.
Yes. We're gonna review episode 3 here. Just a 5-minute recap. We had a wonderful time a couple nights ago with a fellow nurse by the name of Beth Hawk.
Wasn't she awesome?
She was. She was the premiere guest episode for our new podcast. Episode 3 was an interview with Nurse Beth. She's been a nurse for greater than 20 years. We're just going to say 20 years. We don't like to use absolute numbers when we get that far along in our career. And she is a brand new blogger. She's only been a blogger for a year now, but she has garnered a lot of attention in that 1 year. We talked about it at length about different blog posts. We chatted with her about her nursing profession, not only as a nurse at the bedside, being an acute care nurse, but also her experiences as a nurse leader and a nurse educator. She touts herself as the nurse's nurse. And I think after the interview that we had, I think she deserves that particular label.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
So she was absolutely wonderful to have.
It's been a long time. We run into a lot of different people, but in the nursing profession, you'll run into those particular people once in a while that you're just in awe of, and you want to grow up to be like. And I truly believe that about her. I'd love to sit in her lab coat pocket for a couple of weeks and learn as much as I could from her.
Yeah, she loves to talk about evidence-based practice. And she loves to challenge the norm. And I think someone who has been in the profession that long, to have that kind of thirst to want to make the changes that are needed, especially from the bedside to the office, we'll say, is so exciting.
It's exciting. It's exciting and refreshing,
It is.
I think, once again, referring back to everything we've seen in social media, we've seen quite a few. There've been quite a few posts from different individuals who have talked about their pathway to becoming a nurse and how difficult it was. So to have someone who has, and we know the levels of burnout in nursing and healthcare are quite tall. So to have that enthusiasm and that hunger and that desire to teach younger nurses as well is something to be, emulated and admired. So
and she has,
thank you for spending time
she has
with us.
mastered the art of the blog when it comes to using it as a medium for everything that she's passionate about. And she does a wonderful job at teaching other nurses how to blog. Anyone that wants to know how to blog and how to avoid the trap of social media faux pas, you need to go follow Beth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without further ado, with a nice segue into social media faux pas, everybody knows that The View put nursing on the map again. And
yes, they did.
I would like to say in a very positive light. In the beginning of the week, it was not positive in any way. It was a lot of hate, a lot of angst, a lot of offense from many nurses in the profession. And now that we've all had a chance to absorb it, digest it, you and I talked about this on episode 2 when we talked about the Stethoscope Incident, is that this was a gift because it gave us our 5 minutes of fame to talk about nursing and to maybe garner some attention for the things that actually matter to us and to matter to the profession. That in social media, sometimes any publicity is good publicity.
It is. It is. And it's interesting to see that I saw a plug today that said that The View's, their come on, brain work. The people who have tuned in to watch their show, their ratings have gone up fairly, substantially over the last week. So it's been interesting to also see the other people who have kind of jumped on the bandwagon. Should we talk about Dr. Oz right now?
We can talk about who. Well, let's talk about how people have leveraged the popular topic. Let's use that term. How's that?
So, just a little bit of closure with the rest of the stuff that's happened with The View. They came on, they had their apology, kind of like the whole sorry, we're not sorry thing. Then the third day they came on and they actually had a couple of nurses from NYU. Yes.
I think you're right.
They were very well prepared, very well spoken. And I think that they captured who we are in a nutshell.
I believe they were both educators, were they not? Like instructors?
I believe so. So it was nice to see that they had taken the time to do that, trying to do some damage control, I'm sure. But
some people thought it was a forced hand.
Indeed. And as they have lost, upwards of 8 or 10 of their advertisers.
Sponsors, yeah.
Yeah, that's a significant amount of money. So, yeah, Chili, the list keeps growing. I haven't been able to substantiate all of them, but it's impressive. It's impressive what social media has leveraged and what nurses have leveraged. And I think all of a sudden we're realizing that 3 million plus of us, we do have a very dramatic voice. And it's probably the first time in this type of an atmosphere that we've actually been able to all come together under one impassioned topic, where it seems like a lot of times we're so busy trying to do our jobs and trying to hold down our families and take care of all of it. I think we're realizing that getting involved is not such a difficult thing, especially when it comes to leveraging social media and moving in a particular direction. So that is my segue into what we're going to talk about tonight. So on The View, they did discuss the fact that they had no idea. They had no idea what the nursing profession was about. They did not know what a quote unquote professional job, so to speak, that this is. So you and I talked about getting on here tonight and talking about and educating others as to what nursing is. And I know a lot of you in our chat room already know this, but it's good to review it sometimes, and it's good to see where we've come from and where we're going. The other thing that Sean and I really want to do, and Sean, we have a list towards the bottom. We need to take this tipping point and we need to run like hell with it. So I believe this is the time in nursing, and this is the time in our profession that we need to start standing up and say things like, oh yeah, vaccinations are a really good thing. Some of the things are going to be a little controversial, at least, you know, and I'm hoping to bring this controversy to light and discuss these things about NP independent practice. I know that that's a big controversial subject between you and I are both nurse practitioners. This is an important topic for us. And I'm hoping we can get Mike Sevilla in here to have some discussion about that as a family practice physician. Planned Parenthood is another one that I think is going to be on that list for us, as well as at least one of mine that I'm very passionate about is having mental health support for not only our soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, and Coast Guardies, which I love. One of my favorite pilots is from the Coast Guard. You know, it's having that mental health system, which is so broken in the civilian world as well. So that's kind of the outline of where we're headed tonight. So
we've decided that we're done bitching about what the View did to the profession, and it's time to take advantage of what the View did for our profession. I don't think anyone will argue with us when we put a flat statement out there that did the View on purpose offend us? No. I think they were uneducated, uninformed, and unaware. And I don't like to use the reference of, you know, left wing, right wing, and start going down the, you know, the political trail here. But, you know, too many people have pointed that out to me, is that these hosts have done this before with other entities, other professions. So this is not something new that has happened on The View. It just so happens that they pissed off the wrong people. That for once, those people that they pissed off fought back. And yeah, Dr. Stethoscope and her making fun of the reading the email thing, sure, that was offensive. But it's time to move on. It's time to start using this attention for something positive. You know, what the View didn't do for us is the topic right now, is what they did not do for our profession. They don't know what it takes to be a nurse. They do not, because if they did, none of this would have happened. They didn't know what professionalism really is, because we are not the only profession out there. But I'm willing to say without a doubt that Miss Colorado represented our profession in the most professional manner possible. She could have very easily gone on stage and done something differently for the talent portion of her show. Could have chose something simpler. And she went out there when this particular competition was all about looks. And she walked out there in a pair of scrubs. So how better to help refute stereotypes out there that we have been fighting against for decades. It's not something that is common, and it's something that we have to fight for every single day, is to prove ourselves, not only to other professions, but to prove it to our own coworkers and our own colleagues, or who we work with. So it's a continuous fight. And this limelight, this attention is our chance to start telling everyone what exactly we do. You know, I am the first to admit that before I entered this profession, I thought all nurses just passed pills and cleaned up poop. I will admit that I was wrong. And I learned quickly how much more nurses really do, and how our profession, and this is something that I've said it for a very long time, is that our profession is the linchpin of healthcare. You can't function without us. You can't function without a nurse. And the efficacy of your team is dictated and influenced by the quality of your nurses.
I'm with you. When I started my healthcare course when I was, 18 and naive as well. I'm going to medical school. And then I started realizing, my path might not be going that way. Ended up not getting into nursing school, ironically enough, joining the Army, becoming a medic, spent some time ground pounding with the armor and infantry guys out in California. And when I left the Army, it was, do I go to medical school or do I go to nursing school? And interestingly enough, the hard charging, soldier medic I was, to me, I didn't want to be a nurse. I wanted to take the harder route. I wanted to me, nursing, I fought for years and years and years to not be looked at like, hey, you're just a girl. You're just a girl. You're just a girl. And interestingly enough, I had a very strong mentor when I was working civilian. I did acute care transport with a nurse. His name was Russ. And he's the one who sat me down and said, you need to go to nursing school. I didn't quite know all the ins and outs of why he was telling me that, but I trusted him enough to choose that path. And damn if I didn't try the harder path. I think almost anyone who's gone to nursing school will say that. This is an unbelievably difficult path. And part of it is because we are trained to be professionals by professionals. And you have to go through those steps, and you have to, we in the Army, we called it keeper of the badge. You have to earn being a nurse. And even not so long ago, CAPS were still optional at the associates program I went to. So, and talking about being professional, one of the things that I was surprised at with the view is that they kept saying that, I didn't understand the professionalism behind it. And, just going back to the basics, like you do in every 8th grade paper, professionalism, I'm going to actually read you the definition. It's the skill, good judgment, and polite behavior that is expected from a person who is trained to do a job well. If that does not encapsulate nursing, I don't know what does. So
I think, I think every nurse out there who is either first experiencing nursing or who is on the last leg towards retirement can say with 100% certainty that not everybody can do this job.
Yes.
And it's because it takes a toll on every part of your human being. You don't have to just master the science. You have to master the art. You have to master the emotion. You have to master the juggling. It's multidisciplined, and you and I get to say this with a little bit of certainty, is that there are doctors that could never do our job.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
and
because
vice versa.
they are the expert in their field. And if I want someone caring for me or my loved one, they are the person I want caring for me. But I would never trust them to do a nurse's job, because it's so much more than just diagnosis and plan of care. There's more to it. There were many articles out there that talked about, being present, that the doctor shows up for 5, 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes if you're lucky, depending on the patient. And then that's it. Then the nurse cares for them the other 23 hours and 45 minutes. In fact, probably 24 hours, because they're usually at the bedside with the nurse when the doctor's at the bedside, so that they can figure out what's going on,
Right. And I think that boils down to training. It boils down to, what is my personality best fit at? I am also a paramedic, for those of you who don't know. I maintain that licensure for my flight nursing job. And as so many paramedics will tell you, if you are in a car accident, you do not want a nurse showing up to take care of you on the side of the road.
Nope.
It's all about what we are individually suited for and what our training in that background lends us to. So I believe, it's not bashing one segment of this profession or another.
Absolutely
it's
not.
Simply to say, I want the person who is best suited and best trained to take care of me at that certain point of my healthcare continuum.
Yep.
And all of us are definitely professionals in so many different ways. I think one of the ways we shoot ourselves in the foot as a professional group is that we have so many different, and this is going to be, I'm treading on really thin ice probably with this one. But we have so many.
Dodging the bullet.
Yeah. But we have so many different ways to get to the same endpoint. And we can argue that as being good or as being bad. And I think that confuses the lay public. So when you talk about a nurse, we have licensed practical nurses, we have registered nurses, we have nurse practitioners, and then we have other offshoots like certified nurse anesthetists.
Yeah, we have CNSs. Yeah, so then you have
so, and each of those different ways takes
midwife.
takes a different type of education. And even when you're part of that, even when you're part of the nursing profession, it's difficult to keep up on what's next. For you and I, hopefully we'll be grandfathered in, but we might be expected to get our doctorate at some point as a nurse practitioner because the hierarchy of our profession is dictating a lot of those things. So for those of you who, I'm hoping we have some people who are listening right now who are not necessarily in the healthcare field, and we'll go through a little bit of this education and talk about practice, scope of practice, which I think is also very important to explain. So, Sean, should we start from the bottom up? Talk about LPNs?
So then there's the rub, is that you can have LPNs that start. You can have a human being. You can have someone start with no nursing experience and become a nurse's aide. Then they can become a certified nurse's aide. And they get it by simply taking a course and taking an exam. You don't actually go to school for that. But you can have no medical experience whatsoever and become a nurse's aide. And all that means is you're aiding the bedside nurse to help with everyday activities. You are an unlicensed professional. That's what a lot of states call nurses' aides. Unlicensed professional, meaning you don't maintain a license. But I believe CNAs have a certification they have to maintain. I wish I knew more about that, but I think you have to take an exam, and then do you have that afterwards? I honestly don't know the answer to that.
Well, and it's changed, and it's changed by state.
Yes.
This is not national licensure and or certification.
Right.
It's extremely confusing.
Yeah, so some states don't even have a certified nurse's aide. They just have nursing assistants instead of nurses' aides. So they not only
medical assistants.
Yeah, so they not only use different certifications, but they use different terminology as well. And the whole goes deeper, because then you have what's called a licensed practical nurse, and that actually is a licensed professional, and they have what some like to call a technical degree. Which is, I think, equally bad to say, but they basically learn the technical aspects of providing nursing care. They can administer medications, but in some states, they're not allowed to administer specific medications. They can't titrate medications that, they can't administer medications that are titratable. They can't administer medications that are cardio responsive. They can't push a beta blocker IV, but they can give you a beta blocker pill. So it gets very, very confusing. And that's only in the 2 states that I've worked in.
And again, that is very state specific.
Yes.
So
sadly,
I believe LPN is 2 years. It usually takes
generally 2 years. Yeah. And that requires no collegial experience. You don't have to go to college for that. You can take that at a technical school of some sort.
And there are some, I believe, and I'm hoping somebody from the chat room and or anyone listening to this who has more experience with this, who will pipe in and talk to us on our Facebook page or Twitter about this. But I believe that there are also some associates programs out there for LPNs as well, with the intention that you get your LPN, you go through and do that. And then the next step is to get your registered nurse. So you can function as an LPN, and it will depend on your organization. It will depend on like we're going to beat the state dead horse, because that's part of the state differences make me insane.
Yeah.
But yes, it's the fast track that Chili is talking about. The next step, if you decide to continue your education and increase your licensure, is to go on and finish to do your RN. Are you watching the chat room while we're talking?
Mm-hmm.
I'm having a hard time doing both.
Yeah.
And we're getting some great comments as well. So I'm going to keep going on with the next step. The next step is to get your registered nurse, or to become a registered nurse. You do not have to be an LPN or a nurse's aide first to become a registered nurse. Mm-hmm. So to sit for your NCLEX, which is the big, huge, scary, awful certification exam that every single registered nurse in the United States takes to enter into practice and to get your state license. You can do it one of two ways. You can go through an associate's program and earn an associate's degree, usually associate's degree in science, which I did. And or an associate's in nursing, depending on where you are. That type of education is also very focused on the technical aspects. And I know that there's a lot of research out there, and I'm not going to get the quotations right because I don't have all the references in front of me, but I believe that within 2 years of entering into practice, that initial entry into practice, associates prepared nurses usually hit the ground running a lot faster than a baccalaureate or a bachelor's prepared nurse when you look at the evidence behind it.
Which is why associate and diploma nursing, they call it diploma nursing where I'm from, because I actually went to a hospital-based diploma program to become a nurse. I sure did.
Wow. Do any of them even exist anymore?
So they're being liquidated at this point, but they still existed for up until a couple years ago because of the nursing shortage, because that was the selling point, is that you could start and finish your program, take your NCLEX, and be boots on the ground within 2.5 years, 2 to 2.5 years, as opposed to the traditional route, which is the baccalaureate route, which is 4 years. Right. So for someone like myself, who was a second degree nurse who went back to become a nurse, that was appealing to me because I didn't have to spend the money and the time to get another bachelor's degree at the time to become a nurse. So that was why I did what I did. So
the diploma programs, originally, that was how you became a nurse. I believe historically in the hospital that I practice at right now, they had a diploma program, and it's I love going into our library and seeing all the photos on the walls, because back in the day, to become a nurse, you lived at the hospital in the dormitory. It was very rigid and very structured. There were strict rules about where you could go, what you could do. If you read a lot of the historical parts behind diploma programs, it was military-esque in its approach to nursing. And that's where we get such a strong foundation for our professionalism historically. So as all of those diploma programs are starting to go away and we're pushing further into traditional, university type educational foundations,
which we can thank the Institute of Medicine for, because the Institute of Medicine back in 2010 suggested that nurses practice to their full extent, but also gain more education. So it was with that release, and I'll try and find that because I wish I would have thought about that at the time, is the Institute of Medicine wants nurse practitioners to practice to their full extent, but they also want bedside nurses to be highly educated, meaning that all bedside nurses should have a bachelor's degree. And many facilities are instituting that, meaning they won't hire you if you don't have your bachelor's. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Nurse Pammy might be hinting at that here in the chat room, is that the diploma programs are almost non-existent now. You have no choice but to go for your BSN.
Right. So entry into practice as an RN, you can get your associate's degree and sit for your NCLEX. The next step, and where I think the profession is trying to push, and we'll talk about magnet status as well, so I don't forget, is that they want, like Sean said, it's that wanting that higher education. And with the baccalaureate programs, you get a very different foundational entry. It's leadership, research, a lot of the more academic pieces to nursing. So you can enter a traditional four-year school where you're an 18-year-old, you hope your first semester grades are good, you hope and pray and beg, and you get accepted in a nursing school. You spend your 4 years, you come out, and you get a job. So you have the associate's entry, you have the traditional baccalaureate entry, and then you have people like us. So at least myself, I did my associate's degree and did they called it an BSN, BSN MSN bridge program. So I actually entered a program in which I had my associate's degree, finished my bachelor's and my master's simultaneously, which gets into this whole other entry. So with your diploma program, Sean, how did you end up?
So I had to go back and get my bachelor's, but I had to go back and take 4 classes. So it wasn't anything at all for me to get my bachelor's. But I made the choice that when I was finishing my bachelor's, that I was going straight into master's to pursue my next step, because I knew, knowing me, that if I paused and waited, that I would lose my window, I would lose my motivation. And it ended up being the best decision I ever made, because when I was graduating my NP program, nurse practitioners were in high demand where I live, and they were in high demand in certain areas. So I actually got paid very well for my experience and for graduating when I did. So this is where things get really mucky, is that you can be a bachelor's prepared nurse and you can choose to advance your degree, and you can advance your degree in a finger splayed way. So you can choose multiple pathways. You can choose the advanced practice nurse option, which means that you can be a nurse practitioner in different settings. So you have multiple settings as a nurse practitioner. You have neonatal, you have family, you have adult, they have geriatrics. So that's just nurse practitioner alone. Then you have the nurse anesthetist route, which is a specialist in anesthesia. And then you have the nurse midwife, which is specialist in obstetrics. So all of those are under the same umbrella. You start out basically in the same first 2 years, year and a half, base program, and then you all split off into different directions. Now, to make things even more complicated, you have to add in what they call a clinical nurse specialist. And that particular route is more of an educational route or a leadership route.
So that is a master's degree in nursing.
Yes.
So instead of becoming a nurse practitioner, you become a clinical nurse specialist.
Yes, you become an educator. And the difference is that after that year and a half, you split off, and the nurses who want to be nurse practitioners are geared and trained to prescribe medications and to treat patients, whatever population they pick. Whereas that nurse educator will not be trained to prescribe medications. They will not acquire a pharmacology class. They will not pursue DEA licensure, things like that. Whereas the NP will, and here's what gets worse. Those are just masters, because then you take it a step further and you want to pursue the doctorate level. And then you have two options to become a doctorate level nurse. Yes. You can either do PhD, or you can do the most recent and more popular these days, DNP, the Doctor of Nurse Practice. And the DNP is not more than, if I'm not mistaken, 5 to 7 years old. It's not that old.
It's very, very young. I was here in Michigan. We have most of the programs are less than 4 years old. So some of them are just now graduating their first classes. So, yeah. And then the doctorate of nursing practice. So, and that gets into some of the politics of it, which is what I wanted to talk about with magnet status and some of the evidence based for our profession. So we talk a lot about evidence-based medicine, and I think good old Florence Nightingale, man, she's the one who created nursing and created our profession. She is the mother of nursing. She's the one that proved what we do at the bedside matters. So fast forward to today, and we're talking about, so when we talk about evidence-based practice, it means that we have scientific numbers that prove that something that we do it's relevant, it's correct, it's not causing harm, it's actually doing good. And that's even evidence-based. That terminology hasn't been around for very, very much. I mean, maybe 15 years. I mean, how long has evidence-based, just that terminology been around?
Well, evidence-based nursing has been around for greater than 30 years.
But the popularity of the term evidence-based.
Yeah, at least 30 years, because you're going to start talking about informatics. Informatics has been around for 30 plus years. So informatics, I don't know if they coined evidence-based nursing, but we have been utilizing evidence-based nursing ever since informatics was around. So I know for at least 30 years. But I guess it's now the buzzword.
Right.
Let's just use that,
In the hierarchy of our profession, and kind of looking from the top down, they've proven that with the advances in medicine and with the advances in nursing, that the higher education is better for patients. Mm-hmm. So that's the probably the most simple way to put it. So the next thing then is how during a nursing shortage do you push professionals to either go back to school to get a bachelor's and or a master's degree, and if you are already a nurse practitioner, to get your doctorate. And how do you convince 17, 18, 19-year-old kids that they need to start looking at a doctorate in nursing? It's a very difficult thing. So one of the things I mentioned earlier was magnet status. So magnet status, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is a designation that certain hospitals apply for and go through a certification and or recognition process. And once you have achieved magnet status, it means you are a center of excellence for nursing. As a center of excellence for nursing, one of the things that they look for, among a very long list, is that a certain number of your nurses have their bachelor's degrees, that you have a certain number of advanced practice nurses, which are nurse practitioners and CNSs. But they also look to see, ready for this one, Sean? How many of your nurses have specialty certification?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when you look at my credentials and your credentials, we carry lots of alphabet soup behind our name. And this is where it gets confusing, even much more so in the nursing field. But then you go outside. For example, I just sat through interviews over the last 3 weeks, and I have a lot of letters behind my name. And I like to explain to a lot of people that it's, I'm good at taking tests.
So we need to clarify that certifications, some certifications will require college course, baccalaureate education or degrees, whereas some certifications will not.
Correct.
They will only require a certain number of hours performed at the bedside. And then it gets really, really site and area specific. You have the CCRN, which we both possess. You have the CEN, which is emergency nursing. You have pre-hospital certifications for nurses. You have med-surg. You have wound care. I mean, the list goes on.
It does.
Whatever area of nursing you have a passion for, I am willing to bet there's a certification for it.
So to break that down, we have we have state licensure. So once you pass your exam as a nurse, you pay the state to maintain your license. As a nurse practitioner, we are also required to maintain a certification. And this applies to CNSs, CRNAs, et cetera. So what that means is we have a governing body that tells us, and we prove that we have maintained a certain number of continuing education credits and or take an exam every few years to prove that we are still competent in our field. And this is similar to other, paramedics go through and do certifications, as do, physicians have to sit for, additional continuing education and or testing as well. So then you have additional certifications, like Sean said, in the specialty fields. So because I am a transport nurse and I am in, I deal with critical care and I deal with emergency nursing, I maintain above and beyond my nursing certificate or my NP certification and my NP/RN licensure. I also maintain actual specialty nursing field certifications.
Right.
Whew.
And those are not governed by your state. Those are governed
Correct.
by the national certifying body that you choose to take that exam for, which, creates more conversation that as an NP, when I graduated in the state that I graduated in, I had the option to take 2 different certification exams. And I had to choose which one was going to benefit me the most, because certain certification exams produce a certification that some states don't recognize. And that's where things get even more confusing. And wait, I wanted to mention this before I forget, is that we talked about the pathway for nurses to become a master's or a DNP. Now they have created bridge programs that you can go from an RN right to a DNP. You skip BSN, you skip MSN, and you go right to DNP. They have RN to MSN programs that skip the BSN altogether. And while that is beneficial because of time and I guess money, there's the hiccup that if you can't finish the program in a certain amount of time and you go from the RN to the MSN route, and then after year 1, you have a family emergency that you have to stop doing what you're doing. You don't get a BSN after the first year. You basically are still an RN until you finish the MSN or the DNP. So that's the backdraw to that. So for the past 20 minutes, we've been talking about how we classify nurses, meaning from no education or training whatsoever to the most advanced nurses. And if 2 nurses who have been in this profession for 10 years or more and possess an advanced practice degree as well as multiple certifications, if we're having difficulty keeping it all straight and keeping it all together and organized, how if we're having that trouble, how do you think the public feels? So kind of rewinding back to why we're talking about this in the first place is that the View had no idea what they were talking about, but guess what? Neither does the rest of John Q. public. Well,
and how many nurses don't realize that?
Yeah.
I have nurses, even with Beth, who we did the interview with, she's got credentials behind her name that I have no idea what they are.
Yeah. I wanted to ask her that. I totally forgot.
Yeah, I did too. And I haven't looked it up yet. So it's, part of this, and I know a lot of the hierarchy in the professional nursing decision-making circles, they're trying to hopefully streamline some of this, but the longer we go, the more complicated it goes.
Thank you, Roxanne, for bringing up a wonderful point.
Yes.
That here's where it gets even worse, is that in multiple states across multiple lines, NPs and PAs are lumped under the same umbrella. We both can perform. Being physician assistants, my apologies. Meaning that the nurse practitioner and the physician assistant are serving the same role, or we're serving the same responsibility in a facility, even though they are two different professionals. The PA takes the medicine route, and the nurse practitioner takes the nursing route. A PA has anywhere from, I want to say, 5 to 7 years of educational experience, depending on where you go, because some have doctorate programs, some have master's programs, but the average is 6 years. So it's a master's program after you finish your baccalaureate training. And a physician assistant basically gets all their training under the tutelage of a physician, ergo the term physician assistant. Nurse practitioners take a different route. While they still get the same education with the help of physicians, most of our education is endowed to us by other nurse practitioners. Our education is based on our nursing experience and education. So would I go back to be a physician assistant? No, because it does not benefit me in any way. Physician assistants and nurse practitioners in my area of nursing, in the critical care world, are treated almost the same. Their training is different and they're treated differently from the beginning, but a seasoned NP and a seasoned PA there's nothing different other than some of the legal ramifications, meaning that in some states, I can prescribe medications that a PA cannot. And in some states, I can bill for services and a PA cannot. So it has to do with technical jargon more than how we care for the patient. And ultimately, and this is my own personal opinion, nurse practitioners are better suited to work at the bedside than the PAs are, because we have, at the very least, 4 years of bedside nursing experience in some way, shape, or form.
Yes. What a lot of people don't realize is that entering into your master's program to become a nurse practitioner, you have to be a nurse.
Yes.
In
order to maintain our license.
Right. It's mandatory.
Yeah.
So we are going to graduate school already with multiple years of experience, where physician assistants, you can be an English major and go to physician assistant school, spend 2 years in school, and enter into practice with a very similar practice parameters, for lack of a better term. So even though, like you said, we do have very similar, scope of practice, one of the things that we have listed on our initiatives to support are having the nurse practitioner become an independent practice. Because the next thing we need to talk about is the fact that nurse practitioners and physician assistants have to have something called a collaborative agreement with a physician. And that is also, once again, state dependent. A lot of this gets into billing with Medicare, Medicaid specifically. So it becomes a political kind of a mess at that point, because you have some of the physician groups who feel as though nurse practitioners are trying to invade their space, take away the fact that they're physicians. That's not it at all. We don't have enough family practice physicians. I didn't go to medical school because I didn't want to become a doctor. However, I feel that I can provide a service to patients. I know where my limitations are in my personal practice, but at some point we have to accept that we're all on the same team. And, I'm not trying to take business away from a physician if I were to try to hang my own shingle.
So the reason why independent practice matters to a nurse practitioner is, for instance, is that if I decide to change my job and go from where I'm working under with a collaborative agreement with a certain sponsoring physician, I actually have him, and then I have a number of physicians who are also part of that collaborative agreement. If I take my interest to a different facility or a different state, my ability to practice is dependent on another collaborative agreement with another physician. Now think about how that affects someone in a rural area. Is that if I'm in a rural area practicing I'm a family practice nurse, and I'm practicing with a physician in BFE, population 150, and the physician leaves, I, as the nurse practitioner, can no longer practice because my collaborative agreement walked away. So that's why independent practice matters to nurse practitioners in primary care specifically. In my world, in critical care, in the way that my job functions right now, it doesn't impact me greatly. It really doesn't. Because I work collaboratively with physicians at the bedside. So it doesn't impact me as much, but collaborative agreements in rural areas in the primary care setting matter. So that's why we're definitely fighting for this. I had to go off on a tangent.
No, it's good tangent. I mean, this is a lot of information how long did it take you when you were beginning to enter the profession of nursing to figure all this out?
I didn't know. I was not aware of any of it. Aware of any of it.
It's so difficult to navigate. And then heaven forbid you are in a position like some of my colleagues that provide nursing. And I know this applies to paramedics as well. Sometimes you have more specifically with paramedics, which is a little off topic, but you have specific county protocols. So if you move patients in and out of separate counties and or in and out of separate states in the form of transport nursing, you then have to be either licensed or have some sort of a collaborative agreement, or not collaborative agreement, wrong term, some sort of an understood agreement between multiple states to be able to practice in those states. So I have friends of mine that live, on the borders of places like California down towards, the bottoms of Kentucky and Indiana and Ohio. And then you are now expected to maintain all of those licenses in different states as well. So as somebody, and I'm sorry, I lost you, but this is expensive. This gets very expensive. Oh, yeah. So, you cannot tell me that a nurse is not a professional person because we are expected to, and rightfully so, maintain memberships in different organizations, maintain certain numbers of continuing education hours, which all cost money, and it's time. And it's time that you're putting in on your personal, you can't do this while you're at the bedside. You're not reading articles and doing continuing education classes. A lot of times, even on your employer's dime, you're doing it yourself. So, there's so many different aspects. It's not even just about understanding that you're a nurse and understanding your presence on social media as a nurse, understanding that everybody knows you're a nurse and maintaining that. It's like not a good comparison. But it's kind of like wearing a uniform in the military. You are a representative of what you do.
Yes.
So
absolutely. We talked about it before. You're never not a nurse.
Correct.
So,
especially
whether you
when
like it or not.
Family.
Yeah. You become the medical expert for everything.
You do.
So,
you do.
All right. So let's wrap up.
All right. So I'm hoping that this clarified some things for some people. And I'm so grateful that all of you are there and you're asking questions. And, we are going to once again have a post-show open forum for anyone who wants to log in, ask us questions. If we don't have the answers to something, like every good nurse, we will find the answer for you and find somebody who knows the answer. So
the whole point of this episode was to talk about The View one last time. but to give it the positive spin. We're done talking about the negativity. We're done talking about what they did to us and what they didn't know and what they didn't understand. All of the comments and concerns about was the apology genuine, and then bringing out nurses onto the show, and then having other news channels and other talk shows and TV shows bringing on nurses as a way of using it for a PR ploy. So ultimately, this entire stethoscope incident was a gift to our profession. And you need to look at it that way, because for the first time in a while, you have strangers looking at the nursing profession in a different light.
We do.
For even if it is briefly only for these past couple days, somebody paid attention to you more than they did before. So now we can take what little attention is left and spin it into something that you're passionate about, even if it's something job specific or something more broad as profession specific. The View gave us the greatest gift in the world. It gave us a chance. It gave us a second chance at proving to ourselves and to others that we deserve the respect and recognition that we always fight for. And it took my co-host and a couple other individuals out on the social media world for me to realize that I was mad. I was pissed off. And all I wanted to do was slander the mess out of The View. And I never watched The View until this happened. I don't remember ever watching The View. I only knew it existed, never watched an episode. And I went at them with such fervor because they offended me. And we were just the flavor of the week, guys. I mean, come on. It was our turn to be offended, you know.
So now it's our time to take this tipping point, take the voice that we have found. And one of the things that Sean and I talked about earlier today, prior to the show, is that, like we said, we were done bitching about it. And just about that same time, we started to see links from Mike Rowe. So Chili's a big fan. I tell you what, I love the man. He is very supportive of so many things. I love his voice. I love his humor, but I think he wrapped it up the best. He kind of took one of his fans asked him his opinion on the whole situation. And he basically said, yeah, you've got, everybody gets offended about everything, but it is what it is. Some people are ignorant, some people aren't. Nurses are professionals. That's what they are. And then he started, my favorite part about the whole post was that he supports nurses. And for those of you who are not familiar with his initiatives, it's all about, hands-on technical skilled labor. Mm-hmm. And all of those people are professionals. And he also put nursing in that. We are skilled professionals. And I thought that was great. So, the link that I put up there, it's a good read. It sums everything up, and it's like, all right, let's do some good with this. And I think, and it took Mike Rowe to find the quote from Florence Nightingale. And I'm going to read this to you. It says, and this is from Florence Nightingale: I think one's feelings waste themselves in words. They ought all to be distilled into actions which bring results. Yeah. So, Sean, here is to Flo. Way to go, Flo. Here is to taking our words and trying to bring some results.
Yeah,
it's time. It's time for this to happen. So,
well, hey, you know what? This incident also gave us one hell of a boost for our baby podcast here. I don't believe we would have garnered half of the attention that we have gotten had it not been for The View. So my co-host and I thank The View very much. Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Miss Collins, because you did us a great service. You got us some attention, because we've had people show up on our Facebook page, on our Twitter handle, on our blabs, who never would have crossed our paths had it not been for the stupidity of those hosts.
Yes.
So thank you very much. This podcast has been in existence for a week now. Is that right, man?
Yeah.
About a week?
Yeah, about a week.
I bought the domain, and within days, the website was up, thanks to M, and thanks to some very good and aggressive suggesting from some good friends, we jumped on the topic that, about the view, and it seemed to have worked well. We have now a website that has a blog. It has our podcast on there. We have a Facebook fan page. We have a Twitter handle. And we also now have a Google Plus page that will also have our YouTube videos. So for those of you who have graced us with your attention, thank you very much.
Yes, we both know how the fact that you're willing to start tossing out some of your ideas and your questions and those are the kinds of things that we want to see, and we are just craving and asking for. Please send us a direct message, send us a tweet, email us. The website's gonna, over the next probably 2 weeks, as I find time to work on it,
mm-hmm.
there will be more and more ways to contact us, and we'd love to have. Oh my gosh, disability and mental health.
Yeah.
We've got people from all walks in our chat room, and we'd love to have you on here and have you talk to you about it, whether you're a blogger or not. It's
absolutely.
It is so important for all of us to figure out those intricacies, because what I do at the bedside is going to be enhanced by the information, the education, and the concerns that you guys can all bring to us. So this is something Sean and I we're kind of putting ourselves out there with our voices, but this isn't going to be about us. It's about everything else that you as nurses, you as healthcare providers who are joining us, bring to this table and to this discussion. So it's, oh yay!
We are out to change the paradigm here.
Yes.
The goal of this show and the entire Change of Shift website is to spark the conversation and to keep the dialogue going, however that may be, with nurses, with doctors, with other medical professionals, with patients. We want to hear from you. Send us a message, find us, and talk to us. We would love for you to come on to the show.
Hey, Sean, did you see what Chili just put up? The ANA just retweeted us.
Oh, wow. How about that?
Yay!
Holy cow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
All
right, so we need some ideas.
As always, we will have a post show. It'll be an open forum if you want to come on and chat and talk to us. If you have some comments about the show or about anything that's been going on, I'll open up the seat for you to come chat with us. Love it. Any last minute words?
Yeah, of course, Sean.
Check your own pulse first.
Check your own pulse first.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.